and we appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence.
You can always rely on Trump to be hyperbolic.
In American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time.
Okay, very quickly. So Trump says U.S. oil companies will invest billions of dollars in Venezuela after Maduro's overthrow. Donald Trump stated that the U.S. oil companies will invest billions in Venezuela after Nicolas Maduro's overthrow, aiming to fix broken oil infrastructure and generate revenue for the country. Trump emphasized the importance of making money for the US during the national address. Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves and exported around 700,000 to 900,000 barrels per day last year amid declines, with Chevron the only US operator. Let's go back to the news conference.
All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But
why does a statement of this nature have to not only is there hyperbole, but also this sort of telling a story, this sort of storytelling? It was dark, it was deadly. I mean, it just, whatever presidential means, it just doesn't feel presidential. It just doesn't feel serious. I'm just speeding it up.
But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, it's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed.
I mean, it's not a blockbuster film. It's not an action movie. After months of growing, this is according to MSN. Is it independent? Hold up. Yeah, The Independent. After months of growing military pressure on Venezuelan President Maduro, President Trump ordered a brazen operation into the South American country to capture its leader and whisk him to the US, where his administration planned to put him on trial. In a Saturday morning interview on Fox and Friends Weekend, Trump laid out the details of the overnight strike, after which he said Maduro and his wife were flown by helicopter to a US warship. Maduro was in a fortress, Trump says. Trump described Maduro as being highly guarded in a presidential palace that was like a fortress, although the Venezuelan leader was not able to get to a safe room. American forces were armed with massive blowtorches, which they would have used to cut through steel walls had Maduro locked himself in the room, Trump said. Do you see what I mean about the drama of it all? It had what they call a safety space where it's solid steel all round, Trump said. He didn't get that space closed. He was trying to get into it, but he got bomb rushed right so fast that he didn't get into that. We were prepared.
And not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was more importantly killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And
it almost feeds the opposition and the conspiracy theories with lines like, "We're going to run the country."
has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel.
Yes, I'm going to find it really hard not to pull faces.
De las Solis, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately, New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida.
I mean, you could have a debate about legitimacy. Look at the imagery. I mean, look at the what is it reminiscent of? Let me know in the comments.
But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it, in addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs.
Just to reiterate, Trump says, in terms of other countries that want oil, we are in the oil business. He told reporters, we're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses, because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now. But I would say many more will come.
Drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States. Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they call police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, two.
So according to the FT, the US attack on Venezuela has divided Europe. The US attack on Venezuela and capture of Maduro has divided Europe as nations rush to reiterate its belief in international law and sovereignty without directly criticizing Donald Trump. Europe has spent Trump's presidency desperately trying to avoid confrontation with him in order to maintain military aid for Ukraine and fundamental support for the continent's defense. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called for a peaceful and democratic transition in Venezuela and said any solution must respect international law and the UN Charter. But a bloc that has spent almost 4 years demanding Ukraine's sovereignty be respected did not refer to Venezuela's own autonomy. Saturday morning's raid, which Trump said would result in the US running the country for the foreseeable future, exposed divisions and forced many leaders to strain the limits of geopolitical rhetoric. While Italy's pro-Trump Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni described the US operation as legitimate, as a defensive intervention, France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said it contravenes the principle of non-use of force, which underpins international law.
Week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're walking their daughters. They're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. It's been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago. Head of the police department made a statement that assaulted and murdered by Tren de Aragua.
I'm just having to jump ahead.
Animals, they murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States.
Starmer, this is also according to the FT, Starmer declines to say if US broke international law. So Keir Starmer declined to say whether US had broken international law in its strikes on Venezuela and capture of its authoritarian leader, Maduro. In an interview with BBC, Starmer defended the UK's close alliance with the US and the relationship he has established with US President Donald Trump. This is a quote: "I don't shy away from this. I've been a lifelong advocate of international law and the importance of compliance with international law," Starmer told the BBC. "But I want to ensure that I've got all the facts at my disposal, and we haven't got that at the moment. And we need to get that before we come to a decision about the consequences in relation to the actions that have been taken." Nigel Farage, whose Populist Reform UK is leading in the polls, earlier said the unorthodox US action was probably contrary to international law. But Farage, who has at times enjoyed a close relationship with Trump, said that if the US action make China and Russia think twice, it may be a good thing. Oh, Lordy.
Will drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrines,
Core principles of foreign policy.
by a real lot. They now call it the Donroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security strong, stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America. But I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist Maduro is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank
any Americans watching. Just jump in the comments. Let me know how you feel.
I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to
on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out.
I'm speechless. Did he just say he effed around and he found out?
President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is
Oh, I can't. I I just need a quick break. Can I quickly go to Chatham House? There's some analysis here which might be useful for us to look at. There's some questions coming in the comments as well. So the US attacks on Venezuela and Maduro captured. Early analysis from Chatham House experts. This is just, I think, in the last hour. So experts give their initial reaction. And we have senior research fellow, for Latin America, US and North American program, Dr. Christopher Sabatini, and Professor Mark Weller, who's a program director, international law program. So on 3rd January, Trump announced a large-scale US strike on Venezuela and stated that the US had also captured President Maduro. US Attorney General Pamela Bondi later posted on X that Maduro and his wife had been charged with drug-related offences and would face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. Here is early provisional analysis from Chatham House experts, who will monitor developments over the weekend with updates, additions, and further commentary to follow. So here we have Christopher Sabatini's bit. These attacks on Venezuela aren't a surprise, and the narrative around the US rationale for its escalation and attacks off the coast of Venezuela has changed over time from an anti-narcotics operation to the removal of President Maduro and regime change. But this step was almost inevitable after the 6-month escalation failed to generate sufficient internal dissent in Venezuela to prompt Maduro's removal. It looks as if the US focused its attacks on key military infrastructure, Fort Tijuana, and unoccupied military barracks, several airfields, and bases. What is surprising is that the US would actually capture Maduro and his wife and transport them to the US, presumably intending to put them on trial for narcotics trafficking, crimes against humanity, and the like. This now opens up a whole new chapter. The vice president of Venezuela gave a press conference earlier today via telephone and confirmed that Maduro had been removed. Will these extraordinary actions be enough to bring about US aims, or will strikes need to continue? Some US Special Operations Forces could land in Venezuela to support targeted strikes, but a full military invasion is unlikely. Can these strikes go on indefinitely? According to surveys, US citizens are opposed to the use of the military in Venezuela, and any strikes inside Venezuela now will likely force a vote in the US Congress under the War Powers Act. For now, at least, this is not regime change, and certainly not democratic transition, but a decapitation of the Maduro regime. This is already opening up divisions between the civilian members of the government, represented by Rodriguez and her brother George, and the heads of the security and intelligence forces. That's the Interior Minister Cabello and Minister of Defense Padrino. The Democratic opposition, which is now calling for public displays of support, is for now still far from the levers of power. Much will depend on how far Trump wants to continue this operation to support, and I'm saying in quotes, democracy, and not just bring about a rotation in power with, in quotes, Madurismo. Okay. So let's continue this analysis from Chatham House. Even assuming there is regime change, the US's military action will likely require sustained US engagement of some sort. Will the Trump White House have the stomach for that? It's unclear what happens next, but clearly Trump is going to own whatever happens in Venezuela. And there's a map there you can see. So Professor Mark Weller, this is his bit of analysis coming now. International law prohibits the use of force as a means of national policy. Short of a UN chapter mandate, force is only available in response to an armed attack or possibly to rescue population under imminent threat of extermination. Clearly, none of these requirements are fulfilled by the US's armed operation against Venezuela. The US interest in repressing the drugs trade or claims that the Maduro government was in essence a criminal enterprise offers no legal justification. There is some international authority in favor of the use of force to defend democracy abroad. In December, African states intervened in Benin to reverse a military coup. The African Union has authorized intervention in response to a whole series of coup or instances where a government failed to implement a clear election result. However, this remains contested and would only apply in cases of counter-constitutional coups or where an election was clearly won by the opposition, with the sitting government refusing to budge. In Venezuela, the electoral process and the result were contested in both the presidential poll of 2024 and in the parliamentary elections of last May. Manifestly, these elections were not free and fair. However, that is not sufficient to launch an international military use of force, even according to the standard of pro-democratic intervention pioneered on the African continent. The US invaded Grenada and Panama in 83 and 89, respectively, with the underlying aim of deposing governments claimed by Washington to be illegitimate. However, the US did not rely on a purported doctrine of pro-democratic intervention as a matter of law. Instead, it invoked self-defense, a claim that was spurious and internationally rejected. In the case of Panama, a large-scale intervention resulted in the capture of President Noriega, who was subsequently brought to Miami for trial for alleged drug offenses. US courts follow the so-called Kerr-Frisbee doctrine. According to that controversial doctrine, it doesn't matter how a suspect is brought before a US court, a trial can go ahead, even if it results from an unlawful armed intervention or abduction, provided the subject has not been severely tortured in the process. Okay, so helps to have a little analysis from someone else. Let's go back to this wonderful statement where he says, and I quote again, he says he fucked around, so he effed around and found out. I just can't believe it.
About the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026, and under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman Raising Cane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10
It's just so Hollywood, right? Just the way that they're describing it, the way they're talking about it. This is supposed to be a presidential statement. Like, and the kind of language being used already, it's just been atrocious.
10:46 p.m. Eastern time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway.
Jump a little bit. Oh gosh. Are you ready?
An unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other
Again, the play around line.
message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when he tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand.
If you don't know, now you know.
That this is not a president that just
Their briefing before this was like, make sure you get all these one-liners in.
talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. But the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess. That lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that message for Cuba, Mr. President? Mr. President.
You know it's going to get spicy now. What's the dude's name again on the right? The one who said he effed around and found out?
Mr. President, you said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela, so who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
President, are you explaining the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
That would run Venezuela.
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, you know, talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned...
If you're just joining, then you could do a little rewind. I went through a Chatham House analysis, and I also read a few other bits from the FT and the Independent.
The vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well, I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today, he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So, just what are your messages?
Well, he
about
has
that?
cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Did you notify...
I just can't, like, I think probably a lot of you are used to this kind of language, this vocabulary. It's just not right. It's the reason why I say it is because this is no small thing. This sort of, I know I'm about to say the invasion word, but invading a sovereign country. This is no small thing. So to be talking about it in this very flippant, hyperbolic, aggressive, Hollywood blockbuster kind of way is just distasteful. You know, it's crude.
Any members of Congress in advance?
And Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, you know. A lot of ships out there, they sort of knew we were coming. We went there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know what a safe place is? All steel. and he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast, and there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today, but he was trying to get to his safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
Go ahead, finish. Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Did
that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's a blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take up.
There's a comment by, let me see, who is it? Danny says, we don't need politicians that sugarcoat things. Trump says it right, says it like it is. America's sick of this crap. Say it like it is. Just on the point about sugarcoating and saying it as it is. I think generally speaking, you would want your politicians and leaders to be refined, or at least be sort of measured in how they speak on issues. Surely that can still be considered as saying it as how it is, just without like a potty mouth or without being crude.
A lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that?
But it's not. But Alpha, the first, it's not even about PC culture. As in, I think you're being too extreme from one to the extreme to the other. It's not about PC culture, and actually, no leader. If you're trying to communicate with your audience or whoever your audience is, and just being raw all the time and always being very crude all the time, you're going to lose people. You have to, when you're leading, you have to be considered about how you communicate. It's got nothing to do with being PC. It's about being measured. It's about being strategic. It's about being sensible. It's about tempering people. It's about framing things in the right way and not being emotive. We don't want leaders to be reactive or to speak in a reactive way. We want leaders to speak in a measured and responsive way. Again, you're going from one extreme to the other. I'm not defending sugarcoating. I hate politicians speak, but this playbook is, let's just do the antithesis. Let's go all the way the other way because people are so fed up of the politics speak. But that doesn't mean that we want we just want it to be chaos and chaotic. We don't want it to be that. But the thing is, because so many of you and many people are fed up of that politicians speak, you'll welcome this style. But this is extreme. It's not really a good example of leadership. And that's really unfortunate, that because we're seeing something different, you're not seeing the usual lines that you hear over and over again repeated. It's all crap. You will then basically embrace anything that's not that, without being discerning, without thinking, hang on a second, is this how I want? Like, you as a leader, if you're leading any group, any micro, macro, if you're leading somebody, you have to engender trust, and people should rely on you to be measured, to not be reactive. And I just don't think that Trump is a good example for that kind of leadership.
Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to oil and drugs?
And Russia, Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that? Oh,
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had.
How can it be peace and justice? If we're talking about justice, how is this just? How does this exemplify justice?
For a long period of time, it was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids. And that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
There's
troops
going to
to
be a
provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero.
Well, you won't because of what's available. You're not just going to leave.
No chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't.
No, I don't think the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries. Let's be honest.
Strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
What have you done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you.
Oh, no. Imagine going through a whole list of countries we think are failing. They're on our list.
Statement a few minutes ago about when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases,
not the pot calling the kettle black.
Not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all the guards that helped protect Maduro. This is well known. Their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit. Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
Mr. President?
The answer is yes. Yes.
Aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President, on Monday.
I think it'd be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything. We will. Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what that was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies.
We never need to leave.
to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy, very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look, it was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Who's going to send in U.S. military?
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
US
I don't want to get
at war
into the
with Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
Wasn't Biden indeed?
Drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are
Well,
different?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly.
Thank you so much, Al, for the first. Thank you for your donation. Great job, Serena, you say, but I disagree. PC culture is out, being raw, rough, and real is in. I wish I hadn't read that out now. I'm a Leo. Oh gosh. Thank you. To appreciate it. I'm not a fan of PC culture as such. And definitely not a fan of political speak. But I don't know if the raw, rough, and real is gonna be the solution. But I appreciate you. Thanks for watching and your support.
And there the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
No, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question, in which case I'll go one more. It's about
Putin, if you want.
About Putin? Well, that's always nice
You had,
to talk about Putin.
you had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence...
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. I thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last
It's like he's describing a video game.
4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not, and they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities, you know, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation.
Sleepy Joe.
And it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath. And we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to go to Reuters very quickly because I think we've got a list of reactions to the strikes of Venezuela. The US has successfully carried out a large-scale strike. That's Trump posting. So French President Macron said the transition to come must be peaceful, democratic, and respectful of the will of the Venezuelan people. We hope that President Urrutia elect to ensure this transition as quickly as possible. Macron wrote on X. There's more. Friedrich Merz said the legal assessment of the US operation is complex and we will take our time to evaluate it. Adding that principles of international law must apply, he urged that a transition to a government legitimized by elections must be ensured and warned that political instability must not arise in Venezuela. Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez said Spain did not recognize the Maduro regime, but neither will it recognize an intervention that violates international law and pushes the region toward a horizon of uncertainty and belligerence, Sanchez wrote on X. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says these developments constitute a dangerous precedent. A spokesman said the Secretary General continues to emphasize the respect by all of international law, including the UN Charter. He's deeply concerned that the rules of international law have not been respected. Well, we already know that there's institutional breakdown all round. Okay, so Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, "Congratulations, Trump, for your bold and historic leadership on behalf of freedom and justice. I salute your decisive resolve and the brilliant action of your brave soldiers." Well, I'm not surprised that Netanyahu isn't concerned with international law. That's no surprise. Chinese Foreign Ministry, China is deeply shocked and strongly, some will say they're not surprised either because of the presence of China. But in Venezuela, China is deeply shocked and strongly condemns the use of force by the US against a sovereign country and the use of force against the president of a country. A ministry statement said. South African Department of International Relations said South Africa calls on the UN Security Council, the body mandated to maintain international peace and security, but no one's listening, to urgently convene to address the situation. A statement of the South African Department of International Relations said. Russian Foreign Ministry said this morning the US committed an act of armed aggression against Venezuela. This is deeply concerning and condemnable. The pretexts used to justify such actions are unfounded. Ideological animosity has prevailed over business pragmatism and the willingness to build relationships based on trust and predictability. In the current situation, the Russian Foreign Ministry said, it is important, first and foremost, to prevent further escalation and to focus on finding a way out of the situation through dialogue. Argentine President Milei, in a media interview, said, "What we have to understand is that it's the collapse of the regime of a dictator that was rigging elections, that in the last election was badly defeated, and despite that, he clinged on to power. That's why I'd say that today's news is excellent news for the free world." Thanks for so many of you watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate it. Just quickly go to the comments. Alpha says Europe is a mess, Serena. So they have not a position. They're not in a position to criticize the USA. Real talk. You know, Alpha's all about the real, the raw, the rough, the non-PC talk and telling it how it is. It's a jab. I appreciate that, Alpha. I mean, which continent isn't a mess? Tell me in the comments. Alpha also says Venezuela people were literally starving. They had something called the Maduro diet. Real talk, once again, from Alpha. I appreciate that. Might not agree with you entirely, but of course, you know, I mean, when it comes to geopolitics and opinions, we all must have them. We all must know about what's going on politically. in all corners of the world. And just because we're on the other side of the pond, etc., etc., doesn't mean we shouldn't be involved, because it impacts us all. So I think I already read out the Argentine president's comment. Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the Mexican government strongly condemns and rejects the military actions carried out unilaterally in recent hours by the armed forces of the US of America against targets in the territory of the Republic of Venezuela, in clear violation of Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. The Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand said, Canada calls on all parties to respect international law, and we stand by the people of Venezuela and their desire to live in a peaceful and democratic society. Canada is engaging with its international partners and monitoring developments closely. Paraguay says it's closely monitoring current developments in Venezuela and calls for prioritizing democratic means that guarantee an orderly transition. Bolivia. But can I just quickly say to the Americans who feel that, got to do what we've got to do, but it's not your country. Like there's this sort of like arrogance or this presumption, like, yeah, we got to do it, but it's not your country. Bolivia, Foreign Affairs Ministry, Bolivia reiterates its commitment to peace, democracy, and coordination with the international community for humanitarian assistance, the protection of the civilian population, and support for a credible and definitive process of institutional reconstruction. Lots of jargon. Lots of jargon. Please sub if you haven't already. Would really, really appreciate it. Come on, friends. Panama's President Jose says, in light of the events that took place early this morning in Venezuela, my government reiterates our position in favor of democratic trials and in favor of accepting the legitimate wishes of the Venezuelan people, as expressed emphatically at the polls where Gonzalez was elected. Peru, Foreign Ministry, the government of Peru calls for a prompt solution to the political situation in Venezuela, a favor of a transition with full respect for international law and human rights, as well as attention to the legitimate and genuine aspirations of the Venezuelan people to live in democracy with the support of the regional community. I've already read out Keir Starmer's, the British PM's statement earlier. And the list goes on. I'm just looking for something a little less jargony, a little bit more interesting, just a little bit of spice to push back on it. I mean, what does Farage say? He's Britain's Reform UK Party leader. American actions in Venezuela overnight are unorthodox and contrary to international law, but if they make China and Russia think twice, it may be a good thing. I hope the Venezuelan people can now turn a new leaf without Maduro. Let's see. Italy, talking about legitimacy. Talking about drug trafficking. Norway, international law is universal and binding for all states. The American intervention in Venezuela is not in accordance with international law. Peaceful transition to democratic rule, etc., etc. And it goes on. So there we have it. And I've been streaming for about an hour. What are your thoughts? If you haven't already subbed, please do now. So a little bit about me just before we head off. I'm Serena. I've been in comms. I've been in media for more than 20 years. Somebody said I should go back to where I came from. I'm from here. It's been nearly 50 years, fam. So what you chatting about? London, UK. I wish I had like a UK. Does that work? Not quite. So I'm here. I have multiple channels. You can check that out. I have a channel called Serena's Playbook, and it's all about leveling up your strategic thinking. I'm also a creative and doing my postgrad right now in systems thinking, which is all about the zoom out to look at systems, looking at interrelationships and the interconnectedness of it all, and not sort of getting stuck in thinking traps, when you're like super tunnel visioned. So that's what I'm a fan of, and you'll get more of that from me here. Of course, there'll be some bias. Of course, I'm biased. Of course, there'll be some of that because I'm human, and that's why I have merch called Biased, and you can check that out as well. But for now, can we just remind ourselves of what this dude said right here?
Words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men, and I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination
It's coming.
the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump.
Is that the kind of like real talk you like? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already subbed, there's so many of you. Come on, bring up the subs while I'm here. I do appreciate you, your time and attention. And yeah, protect it at all costs, since it's the most important resource that we have and that you have. So I appreciate you giving it to me over here for at least an hour. I will be back. There are other videos and other live streams you can check out on this channel, and sub if you haven't already. It does matter. At some point later in 2026, we will see a real transition where follow accounts, subscribe accounts won't be perhaps as visible, and definitely sponsors, brands, etc., don't rely on just that. It is much more about the engagement and the watch time. But it still helps smaller channels like me. So please do sub now if you haven't already. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section, and I'll catch you in the next one. But stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you